Alright guys, so today we're going to do this arithmetic review and we're going to come down here and we'll take a look at this addition table and we want to fill in the appropriate natural number. And so here you see we have an addition table. You have 57, 16, 39, 62, 76, and 63, and we want to use these numbers to fill in the missing numbers. It's actually pretty simple to do. So the idea is maybe I'll look at 16 first, and over here there's 39, and I know there's some number that goes here, such that when I take question mark and I add to 16, I get 39. So the idea is to take 39 and take away 16. And remember, we're not supposed to use our calculator, so what we're supposed to do is do the subtraction by using this idea of grouping, really. So the idea of grouping is you look at 16 and you see it's a 10 and a 6. So it's easy to take off 10 from 39, so that's 29. And you still have to take off 6. And then when you're below 10, the subtractions are usually pretty easy. So 9 minus 6 is 3, so you get 23. So right here, we should put 23. So this one is 23. So 23 plus 16 should be 39. We can do the same thing using 57 and 76 to find out what this number is right over here. And so we'll do 76 minus 57. And again, we'll do this sort of by looking at 57 as a 50 and a 7, and it's easy to take 50 off of 76. That just gives you a 26, and you still have minus 7. And then you can subtract 7 from 26 and get positive 19. So this question mark right here would be equal to 19. And then we could do something a little bit different. Since we know this one is 19 and this one is 23, we can find what goes here by simply adding them together because it's an addition table. So we can take 23 plus 19. And again, we'll use this sort of method of grouping by looking at 19 as a 10 and a 9. So that's going to be 33 plus 9. And then when you add 9 and 3, you go up to, what, like 12. So it's really 42. And so you put a 42 right here. And then you could do the rest in a sort of similar manner. So let's see, we can do 19 and 63. So we'll take 63 and subtract off 19. We'll take off the 10 and get 53. We still have to take off the 9. And so when I take off the 9, what I actually do is I go down 8 to 45, and I take off one more and get 44. So this right here should be 44. And then what else can I do? Oh, I could take the 44 and add it to the 16. So let's do that. So 44 plus 16. So 16 is like 10 plus 6. So this is actually 54 plus 6. So that's really 60. So I'm basically forcing my brain to kind of group these numbers, to regroup them into numbers that I can work with easily in my head. I can also do 16 and 57. So let's do 16 and 57. So 16 plus 57. So that's equal to, and this time I'm going to use this number, 16 is 10 and 6. So that's actually 67. I still have plus 6. And so that's equal to 73. And then finally, let's do this last one here. So let's use 23 and 62 to see what goes right here. And so we'll do subtraction. So I have 62 minus 23, which is equal. I'll take off 20, which is 42, and then I still have to take off 3 more. And then that's equal to what? 39 is count down. 1, 2, 3 down to 39. So right here goes 39. And then I'm going to add 39 and 44. So 39 plus 44. And so I'll look at 44 as 40 plus 4. And so I'll add 40 and get 79. And I still have plus 4 to do. And so that's equal to 83. So 83 goes right here. And then finally, I have 57. 57 here plus 39. And that's equal to what? Well, 57 plus 30 is 87. and I still have plus this 9 here, and then that's equal to, now when I do this one, since I'm so close to 10, I actually think about adding 10, so I get to 97, but take away 1, so I get 96. So when I'm adding 9, I'm thinking, oh, add 10, and then take away 1 is like adding 9. It's an easy way to get to my answer. So 96. So these types of problems, they not only help you sort of practice your basic sort of addition skills, but they also help you sort of practice your basic problem solving skills by solving a problem, by breaking it down to easier problems and then pulling it back together to get your answer. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. Down here, we want to complete this multiplication table by filling in the appropriate integers. All right, so this one we have multiplication. So the idea is to sort of practice our basic times tables in some sense. So let's take a look at what? Let's take a look at 9 and 54. So there's some number over here that we're going to multiply 9 by to get 54. So the idea is, can you recall this number? If you can automatically recall, if you can automatically remember that this is actually equal to 6, because 9 times 6 is 54, then your times tables are good in some sense, at least with 9s and 6s. If you can't immediately recall it, you're going to have to work on your times tables a bit, and I'll put some material on the course webpage that will help you. So 9 times 6 is certainly 54, and then 6 times 7, so to find what goes here, you can just take 6 times 7, and we get this to be 42. What else? So let's see, what else can we do? I think that's it for right up here. So down here we can go to, now we can look at negative 21 and 7 here, and we think, okay, what number times 7 gives us negative 21? And now I know 3 times 7 is 21, so to make it negative, you should put a negative 3 here. And then we can look at negative 3 and 12 and say, okay, what number times negative 3 is going to give me 12? And that'll be a positive 4. And then we can take this 4 times 6 and get 24 here. We can take 9 times negative 3, get negative 27 there. Take 4 times 8, we get 32. 9 times 8, which is 72. And finally, 7 times 8, which is 56. Oop, and I made a mistake right here. This should have been negative 4. Right, this is negative 4 because negative 4 times negative 3 is positive 12. If it's not negative, this should be negative 12. And so that changes this number a bit. This should be negative 24, and this should be negative 32, because a negative times a positive is a negative, and negative times a positive is a negative. So make sure you make that correction, and maybe you saw it. It's easy to make mistakes on these. And that's why we have calculators, but at the same time, you're going to notice that later on we're going to do things like factoring. So we'll do, like, let's say x squared, and let's do minus 32, and then let's do plus, let's do 4x. And so in order to factor this, what we'll have to be able to do is you'll have to be able to look at this 32 and immediately say 8 times 4. So you have to look at this and immediately recognize the different types of factorizations. If you can't do that, then it's extremely difficult to factor these. So what we'll do is we'll say this x plus or minus something times x plus or minus something, and the 32, the somethings, we'll try to say, well, the factorization of 32 is 8 and 4, so we'll put an 8 here and a 4 here, and the pluses or minuses come from right here basically. So this one's going to be a plus and this one's going to be a minus. And we'll talk all about this later in the semester. But we really need to make sure that your times tables are strong. Otherwise, things like this become extremely difficult to do. Okay, so let's move on to the next type of problem, which is we want to fill in another addition table, but this time we want to use a rational number. So you'll see that we're working with fractions. So this is another issue students typically have is sort of working with fractions. So we want to practice this a little bit. All right, so the idea is what? So we want to figure out, let's do this one first. Let's look at the 7/3 and 9/5. So we want to figure out what number goes right here. When you add it to 7/3, you get 9/5. So you can actually set up an equation if you really want to, and it's basically what we did before, but let's look at it. You're saying, hey, what goes here? So question mark plus 7/3 is equal to 9/5. Right, so how are we going to solve this one? The idea is question mark is the same thing as 9/5 minus 7/3. And so we just need to do the subtraction, and we'll figure out what question mark is. Now I can't do the subtraction in my head. I have to first find what's called a common denominator. And it's kind of important to think about why you have to find a common denominator when you're adding and subtracting fractions. And the idea is that when I say something like 9/5, what this actually represents is 9/1/5. And when you say something like 7/3, what this represents is 7/1/3. And you can't add or subtract a fifth and a third unless you convert them into the same thing. You find a common denominator. It's sort of like working with money. You can't really add dimes and nickels unless you think of them in terms of cents. So if you take like 3 dimes plus a nickel, you say it's 35 cents. So what you did is you actually converted the dimes into cents, the nickels into cents, and then you added them together. But you really don't think about it when you do it. Here we have to force ourselves to kind of think about it. So it's not too hard to add fractions because all you have to do is find a common denominator. And so here you have a 5 and here you have a 3. So what we're going to do is we give the 3 here, so we put a times 3 here. In order not to change your fraction, you have to put times 3 on top. Here you're going to put times 5, and here you're going to put a times 5. And so what we have is 27 over 15 minus 35 over 15. And so that's equal to, and so what you have is 27 of these, take away 35 of these, all over 15. So 27 minus 35, let's do it like we sort of did before when we were subtracting. So if you're going to take 27 minus 35, I'd probably first just take off 20, because that would get me down to 7. So I have 7 and minus 15. And then when I have 7 minus 15, I know I have 8 things, but they're negative 8 things, right? So I have positive 7, and I take off 15, so I count down 7, and then I have negative 8 things left. So this is negative 8 over 15. So that's going to go right here. And we can do the same thing with 1/2 and 2. And so on this one, we'll just take 2 minus 1/2. And this will tell us what number should go here. Now, this one I can do in my head. If you take 2 minus 1/2, you get 1.5. So you get 1.5 or 3/2. So you could probably do that in your head. If you can't do it in your head, the way you want to think about this is you want to think of 2 as being 2 divided by 1. And so to get a common denominator, all you're going to do is you're going to multiply the bottom by 2 here and the top by 2 here. And so you get 4/2 minus 1/2. And now say this to yourself, 4/2 minus 1/2 is 3/2. Your brain will automatically tell you what the answer is if you say it correctly. It's kind of like 4 apples minus 1 apple is 3 apples. So you can use that same sort of phrasing to help you with fractions. And so you get 3/2 here. And then finally, let's do this one. So let's use -1 and 2/3. So we'll take -1 and we'll take away 2/3 and see what that gives us. So again, we can rewrite -1 as -1 over 1. And then we can multiply the top and bottom by 3. And so we'll get -3 over 3 minus 2 over 3. And so that's equal to -5 over 3. So -3 of these minus 2 of these is -5 of these. And so right here we put -5/3. Right, so once we've filled in this column and row, all we have to do is now add these things together to figure out the rest of the answers. So let's do that. And so let's look at 2/3 plus 7/3. So that's a nice one. There is already a common denominator here, so 2 of these plus 7 of these is 9 of these, so you get 9/3. And 9/3 is actually the number 3. Right, so remember 9 is 3 times 3, and if you divide by 3, you can cancel off the 3's, so that's equal to 3. Remember, it works for multiplication here, but it won't work for addition. So a common mistake students tend to make is if I write 3 plus 3 divided by 3, they'll often try to cancel off these 3's and get left with this being equal to 3. But of course that's not right. You can't cancel off a 3 here and a 3 here because that's actually 6 over 3, which is 2. Right, so remember, you can cancel when you're multiplying and do the same thing on top and bottom, but not when you add. Okay, so where does this go? This goes right here. That's 3. And then we have 2/3 plus 3/2. And so we need to get a common denominator. So I'll put a 2 here and a 2 there, and then times 3 here and times 3 here, right? So you can't add a third and a half, but as soon as you get a common denominator, you have 4 over 6 plus 9 over 6. Right? So you have 4/6 plus 9/6, which is 13/6. And so I'll put a 13/6 here. And we just keep going. So let's just keep going, keep practicing adding and basically adding fractions right now. And so let's look at negative 8/5 plus negative 5/3. So negative 8/5 plus negative 5/3. And again, you need to find a common denominator because you can't add a fifth and a third. They're not the same thing. So we'll put a times 3 here, a times 3 there, and then we'll put a times 5 here, and a times 5 there. And so this will be equal to negative 24 over 15. And so plus a negative is a minus, so then minus 25 over 15. And so that's going to be equal to negative, so you have negative 24 minus 25, so it's going to be almost negative 50, but one shy, so negative 49. Right? So negative 20 of these, negative 20 of these is negative 40 of these, and negative 4 and negative 4 is negative 9. And so you can combine them together if you want and say negative 49 over 15. And so that goes right here, negative 49 over 15. And it looks like I made a mistake again because I didn't copy it down right. So let's go back here. That should have been a 15. You can see that. And so that changes this problem just a bit. So this was a good problem to practice, but let's do it again. So right here you have negative 8 over 15 minus 5 over 3. Now this is actually kind of an interesting problem because yes, they have different denominators, so they do not have a common denominator. But in order to get a common denominator, it's actually pretty simple to do because I know 3 will go into 15. So what I'll do is I'll just put a times 5 here and a times 5 there, and I'll get negative 8 over 15 here, and then minus 25 over 15. And so that's actually equal to what? This is negative 8 minus 25, so that's a negative 33 over 15, which can actually be reduced if you think about it. So here, this can be reduced because remember, negative 33 can be factored. This is actually, let's say, negative 3 times 11, and 15 is 3 times 15, so 3 times 5, sorry. So 15 is 3 times 5. And so that's equal to negative 33, or not negative 33. The 3's cancel, right? So here go the 3's. They're going to cancel off because they're on top and bottom, and you're multiplying. And this is equal to negative 11 over 5. So right here, this answer should be, since I wrote down that negative 8 over 15 incorrectly, and we corrected that, it should be what? It should be negative 11 over 5. All right, so let's keep going here. So let's do this one. So 3/2 plus negative 8 over 15. So 3 over 2 plus negative 8 over 15. All right, so obviously two different denominators, so how do we find a common denominator? Well, 2 and 15 don't have any in common, so I'm just going to put a times 15 here, and a times 15 there, and then a times 2 there, and a times 2 here. And so on top here I have 3 times 15, which is 45. So I add 15 3 times. And then 2 times 15, which is 30. And then I have plus, but that's a negative, so I want to make it minus. So minus 16 over 30. And so what's that equal to? Well, I have 45 thirtieths minus 16 thirtieths. So first I'll count down 10 and get to 35. Then I'll count down 6 more and get to 29. So I have negative 29, not negative, sorry, positive 29. Because again, I go down 10, which is 35, then you go down 6, which is 29, over 30. So this is 29 over 30. And then we can look at, let's look at negative 5/3 plus 1/2. So let's do that. So negative 5/3 plus 1/2, which is equal to what? Again, I need to find a common denominator, so I'll put a times 2 here and a times 2 up here, and then I'll put a times 3 here and a times 3 there. And so I have negative 10 over 6 plus 3 over 6, which equals what? So negative 10 plus 3, so you're going to go where? So it goes negative 9, negative 8, negative 7. So to negative 7, and this is all over 6. So right here I have negative 7 over 6. And finally, I can do the very last one. We can take 1/2 and add 7/3 to it. So 1/2 plus 7/3. And so that would equal what? We need to find a common denominator again. So I'll multiply this by 3 and the top by 3, so you don't change it. Still 3 over 6 is 1/2. And I'll multiply this by 2 and the top by 2, so I don't change the 7/3. And I get 3 over 6 plus 14 over 6, which equals 17 over 6. I don't know why there's a 1 here. There should be a 1 there. So this is 14 over 6. So you have 17 over 6. And so that goes right there. So this is another good way to practice adding and subtracting fractions, finding common denominators. And remember, over here I made a mistake because I forgot to write this as 15. So this is just for fun. So you don't need to worry about this piece right there. All right, let's finish this up. So we're going to finish up with multiplying fractions. So down here on number 4, we want to complete the multiplication table, again, by filling in the most appropriate rational number. And so let's see how this works. Let's pick two numbers. Let's try to figure out what goes where. Let's try to figure out what goes let's figure out what goes right here. This is probably the easiest one to do. So a multiplication table works. You take 2 times this, 3/2, and that's going to give us question marks. So you're going to take 2 times 3/2. So when you multiply fractions, the way this works is you can look at 2 as a fraction by writing it as 2 over 1. And it's very simple to do. It's a lot easier than addition or subtraction. You simply multiply the top 2. So 2 times 3 is 6. And you divide by, you multiply the bottom 2. 1 times 2 is 2. And so that's 6 over 2, which remember 6 is 3 times 2. And so what happens to the 2's here? They're going to cancel, and so you just get back 3. So this answer right here is 3. Let's look at another one. Let's look at how we would do, let's try to find this one here. So I have 5/7 and 1/9. And so 5/7 sevenths times question mark equals 1/9. So to find question mark, what you're going to do, instead of multiplying, you're going to divide. So you're going to take 1/9 and you're going to divide it by 5/7. And that's going to give us that question mark. So now when you divide fractions, the rule, remember, is you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Right, so that's the rule. And so we'll multiply by the reciprocal of 5/7. So you have 1/9 times, and so reciprocal of 5/7. Reciprocal is just a fancy word, remember, for flip. So you just flip the fraction. So times 7/5. And so that's equal to 7 times 1 on top, so that's 7, and 9 times 5 on the bottom, so that's 45. So right here, this is 7 over 45. All right, let's do another one. Let's try to find this spot here by using the 2 and the 1/4. So what we would do is we take 1/4, right? So basically 2 times question mark equals 1/4. So to find question mark, you take 1/4, and instead of multiplying by 2, you would divide by 2. And you have to remember, when you're dividing by 2, 2 is really a fraction, 2 over 1. So to find this answer, you'd multiply by the reciprocal. So you multiply by the reciprocal of 2 over 1, which is 1 over 2. So you just flip 2 over 1, and you get 1 on top and 8 on the bottom. And so that's equal to 1/8. Let's do this last one. So the last one, let's do it in purple. So here I want to find what goes right here. And I have 3/2, and I have 3 here. Now, I could work this straightforward, or I could realize that here I have a 3, and here I have a 3/2, and here I have a 3, and here I have a 3/2. So the answer should be the same as this. So it's just actually a repeat column, so it's actually equal to. If you didn't see that, you could simply find it by taking 3/2, or 3. So take 3 and divide it by 3/2, which is the same as 3 times, you multiply by the reciprocal, 2/3. And you can see you have a 3 on top and a 3 on bottom, so they're going to cancel. And of course, you get back to 2, which we already saw. But you can also do it by hand if you didn't see it. What that means is that basically this column and this column are exactly the same. So you don't need to do this one. This is also going to be a 4th. And then down here, we just need to do one of these. So let's just do one of them. So let's take this 2 times 7 divided by 45. So let's take 7 divided by 45. We'll multiply it by 2. Remember, when you multiply by 2, it's like multiplying by 2 over 1. So it's just equal to 14 on top, 7 times 2, and the 45 on the bottom. So this is 14 over 45, which means this has to be exactly the same thing because these columns are basically the same because they have the same number on top here. And so this is also 45. And then finally, let's finish up here. So let's take 5/7 times 1/8. So we have 5/7 times 1/8. And so that's equal to 5 on top. And then 7 times 8 is, what, 56? So this is 5 over 56. Again, we're practicing multiplying fractions, but also our times tables at the same time. And so again, if you struggle with these and it's the multiplication that's hurting you, you have to go and review your times tables. And so this one is then 5/7. The next one, we'll take 5/7 here, and we'll multiply it by 3 over 2. And that'll give us this empty square right here. So 5/7 times 3 over 2, which is equal to 5 times 3 is 15, and 7 times 2 is 14. And so that's 15 over 14.